Hello class. In this video we're going to do an example of adding and subtracting rational expressions. Okay, this is the problem we'll be doing, so let's go ahead and get started. Before you can add or subtract rational expressions, the first thing you always have to do is to make sure that your denominator is the same. You have to have a common denominator before you can add or subtract rational expressions. In this case it's not, so let's go ahead and make it so that they are the same. I've got polynomials for my denominator, so in order to find the common denominator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the process of least common multiple. So I'm going to look at the x minus 7 and the x squared minus 15x plus 56, alright? So let's go ahead and start with this one using least common multiple. So the x squared minus 15x plus 56, right? Okay. What I need to do is I need to break this down into its factors, right? So let's go ahead and do that. And to break this down into its factors, I'm going to use what's known as a is equals to 1 factoring, which is in another video, all right? And when I do that, okay, I'm going to get two factors for this polynomial. What I'm going to do is look for two factors that multiply to 56 and add to negative 15, all right? So those two numbers are negative 7 and a negative 8. All right. So this are the factors of this polynomial broken down. Now let's look at x minus 7. So x minus 7, okay. Now x minus 7 is a prime number. You cannot break that down anymore. So basically that stays the same, x minus 7. So now what we're going to do is to find our least common denominator, okay, by way of least common multiple, right? So our least common denominator, which is what we're looking for, so we can have a common denominator for this fraction, okay, is going to be x minus 7, because we have to find the factors, and then we have to represent each of the factors at least once, okay, and then x minus 8. And that's it. There are no more factors to represent, but we got to represent each factors at least once. And the powers for all of these are all the same, so basically there are no higher power for x minus 7. So basically that stays the same. All right? So this is our new denominator. All right? So that's how we find our common denominator. Now that we've got that, let's go ahead and create our new fraction with our new denominator. It's going to be x minus 7. X minus 8, x minus 7, x minus 8. Okay. As it turned out, x minus 7 times x minus 8 is just this polynomial. Okay. It's just if you multiply these two together, you actually get this. That is our common denominator. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look for a new numerator for our first term, and we're going to look for a new numerator for our second term. Okay. Now, how do we do that? Well, in order to get the new numerator for our first term, we're going to take the old numerator, which is 5, multiply it times some number. Okay? And also for the second term, in order to get the new numerator for this, we have to take the old numerator, which is 2, and multiply it times some number. Now how do we get those some number that I'm referring to? Well, to get the number here, I would have to divide the new denominator, which is x minus 7 times x minus 8, and I'm going to divide it by the old denominator, which consequently is the same as this. Okay, the old denominator is basically x squared minus 15x plus 56, which is basically this is just broken down. This is the factored form of this. So what you're doing is you're dividing basically this number divided by itself, okay, and that'll give you 1. Alright, so that's all I'm doing. I'm taking this new denominator, and dividing it by the old denominator, and which is 1, and I put the number here. Let's do it for the second one, the second term. So I'm going to take the new denominator, which is x minus 7, that's x minus 8. I'm going to divide that by the old denominator, which is x minus 7. And if you do that, the only thing that cancels is these, right? So you're left with x minus 8. So what goes here is x minus 8. All right? So now we've got our old fraction the way it looks without the common denominator. Here's a new fraction with a new denominator. All right? I'm going to go ahead and just erase all this stuff right here for the moment so I have some room. Okay? Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute whatever happens here. Now if you notice, this fraction remains the same. This is still a 5 in the numerator because if our denominator didn't change, our numerator is not going to change either. All right, so just make sure you keep that in mind. But I'm just going to write my polynomial in factored form for now. Okay. So that's what we have. Minus. In this case, what we have to do is we have to basically distribute that. Okay. We have to basically distribute that into this parentheses. So we get minus 2x. Actually, it's literally 2x minus 16. Okay. X minus 7. X minus 8. So that's what we have in our numerators right now. So let's keep going in this problem right here. We're going to continue here. All right. So now the next step is to combine the numerators since we have a common denominator now, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to rewrite this as one whole fraction with our common denominator. X minus 8, okay? And this is going to be a 5. Now when you have a minus sign right here, you actually have to distribute this negative, okay, to both terms inside the parentheses, all right, or inside the new term here, which is going to be minus 2x plus 16, okay? And we're just going to basically combine the numerator, combine the like terms in the numerator, and we're going to end up with, there'll be a minus 2x, all right, and then 5 plus 16 is going to be plus 21, all over. Now I can rewrite this denominator either in its factored form or I can rewrite it in its polynomial form. So let's go ahead and write it in its polynomial form, which is x squared minus 15x plus 56. And there you have it.